The Honest Garage Podcast, where real shop owners tell real shop stories.
Today on the Honest Garage Podcast, we're talking with a shop owner who's seen decades of change in this industry and somehow managed to come out of all of it with more gratitude, more community involvement, and a shop that literally has good works in the name. Our guest today is Glen Hayward, owner of Good Works Auto Repair in Tempe, Arizona. Glen's been in the auto industry since the mid-'70s, starting out in Milwaukee, turning wrenches right out of high school. Over the years, he's done a little bit of everything. Worked in gas stations, held jobs outside the industry, fixed cars on the side, and even survived a gasoline explosion that burned roughly half his body. Somewhere in the middle of that, he spent nearly 9 years on the mission field in Mexico, where he kept vehicles running in some pretty tough conditions and learned what service really looks like when people are depending on you. In 2004, Glen came back and used a home equity loan to open Good Works Auto Repair in Tempe with his wife, Rayanne, and a partner and just a few bays. They started as a small, owner-operated shop and over time grew into a modern 11,000 square foot facility near ASU with around 15 bays, a clean waiting room, ASC certified techs, and one of the strongest reputations in the East Valley for honest, affordable repair. In 2012, they expanded from 3,000 to 7,000 square feet, and in 2013, they became one of the first independent shops in Arizona to specialize in hybrid repair and hybrid battery conditioning, eventually partnering with the hybrid shop and serving everything from Priuses to Teslas. Along the way, Glen's invested heavily in his own growth as an owner. He's been with ATI, Automotive Training Institute, for nearly 20 years, surrounding himself with other shop owners and coaches who push him on margins, labor rates, leadership, and systems. Because as he likes to say, most of us learn how to fix cars long before we learn how to run a business. And that good works idea isn't just branding. His shop supports helping hands for single moms, does clinics and repair events through local churches, and uses the business as a way to serve people who might otherwise fall through the cracks. In this episode, we're going to talk about what it's like to stay in this industry from the carburetor era to the EV and hybrid era, how missions work and faith have shaped the way he runs his shop, and why having a circle of coaches and other shop owners in your corner might be one of the most underrated advantages in this business. Glen, welcome to the Honest Garage Podcast. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, David. Thank you for allowing me to be on your podcast.
Yeah, of course. We're really happy to have you on the show.
I'm excited to be here.
Great. So one of the first things that we ask people as we're getting started on the show, an easy softball question. What was that car that got you started in the industry? What was that one that you were always working on or that you were excited about and trying to build?
Man, I'm not really into modifying or do anything. My first car was a 65 Ford station wagon with the 289, and it needed to be rebuilt. I rebuilt the motor and put it in, and then I had to have the transmission rebuilt. I was not into doing transmission rebuilds, which I still am not. I've had guys along the way who've done that. Most of my send out, or I just put in a reman these days because it's just that much less problematic, time consuming, and also the warranty that most of these companies carries 100,000 miles, and I can't personally warranty anything for that long, so it's a good thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know a lot of us in this industry got started because there was some passion project or something we were working on. For me, it was a 1967 Chevy pickup. It was a C10 that I was restoring with my dad.
Nice.
And that once this kind of gets in your blood, it's really hard to ever want to leave.
But as you mentioned, I had worked in other industries and stuff like that before I started my business, but I always made more money. That was the interesting thing. I worked corrections here for 12 years, and I made literally almost twice as much money as I did working on cars out of my house than I was making as a corrections officer. Even though I made the rank of lieutenant, it didn't matter. I still made more money working on cars. And I had the talent, I had the drive. Back when I started, there was no computers to do anything. So you had to get all the Haynes books and stuff and get them out and do your diagnostics and figure out how much labor to look at, to charge the customer and so on.
Yeah. So walk us through that journey a little bit because there's a lot that's changed from when you started in the industry to where things are at now. And walk us through a little bit of your journey throughout your career to where you're at now and walk us through some of the major changes you saw along the way.
Okay, so when I started in the three bay Shell gas station, that obviously three bays, and I had already gone to technical school and got some certifications. And when I told the guy what I could do, he hired me right on the spot. Says you can start tomorrow, bring your toolbox. So that was pretty cool. I mean, usually it's
Yeah.
a pretty arduous task to try to convince somebody that they want to hire you. But he saw I was a good, clean cut, honest kid, and I was 17 years old at the time. And I graduated high school early and I'd taken all these courses, metal shop, wood shop, auto shop. If there was a shop class to take, I just had that drive inside of me. I wanted to know how to fix things. It didn't matter if it's a piece of wood or a piece of metal or whatever it was. And I had been working on cars and pulling motorcycles out of garbage cans with my brother in the neighborhood and fixing them up. We didn't know anything about fixing motorcycles, but we got them all running and riding them. And my dad was very handy with a wrench as well. And back then, the cars were not nearly as sophisticated as they are. They were probably a 50th of what they are today in terms of that. But my dad showed us how to overhaul carburetors and put spark plugs in cars and do tires and brakes and exhaust. And I grew up in Wisconsin, so having to change your exhaust system was fairly frequent on those things. They rust and corrode and get holes in them. So if you didn't want
Right.
to breathe gas fumes and you got asphyxiated, you did what you had to do. But my dad was a very great handyman. He rebuilt many portions of our house, and what used to be an attic became two bedrooms, and we were watching and helping and observing, and a very industrious guy.
Yeah. And now you're transitioned to running your own shop. What was that transition like going from working on the side to taking the risk and taking out that line, that home equity loan and taking the jump?
That was a big deal. I took out a $30,000 loan on my house, and I think interest was pretty cheap back then. Even on a home equity loan, it's like 4% or something like that. So even if it fails, I'll still be able to figure out a way to pay everything back and so on and so forth. But in the beginning of the business here, Good Works Auto Repair, I had a business partner, and Nathan was a master technician, as was I. Actually, I was a couple of questions short on the transmission thing because I didn't do transmissions, so I just fumbled my way through. But all of the other things on the ASE tests, I passed the flying colors. And I consider myself a master tech, even though I didn't do transmissions, because we could always figure out a way to do that. And there's constantly training classes and things that you read, now more so than then online. There's so much information out there. If you're a fairly intelligent person, you can figure stuff out by reading schematics and wiring diagrams and things like that. And that's just stuff you pick up over time. And as cars have become more sophisticated, you need to depend on that stuff a lot more than you ever did before. You could listen to a car with the screwdriver in your ear and hear a tick and you knew what was going on. Now it's like you hear a tick and you have to look up the codes and figure out what the most common failures are and do testing on it to confirm your suspicions. And you can't just take a wild guess. I just did one like this last week. It must be the same thing. You get in this big audacious job and you end up behind the eight ball, if you will, trying to figure out what's really wrong with the car because it wasn't what you thought it was. So guessing costs a lot more money than doing research and making sure that you're spot on in your diagnostics. And I can't tell you we've never made a mistake or misdiagnosed anything. It's happened.
Sure.
I would say probably 2% of the time, but that 2% can cost you a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of apologies to the customer. Oh, we put this part on and didn't fix the car. So now we're back to really figuring out what's wrong. But
Yeah.
I guess that honesty with the customer too, and saying, hey, we did something and that wasn't it. We're going to get to the bottom of it and get the car fixed. And we always do. And so that instills a sense of confidence, even though they're a little bit dismayed that they trusted you to figure it out right away and you didn't. And it took a couple extra days to have their car. And at one time we had loaner cars and we've always had a shuttle, which we do. At some point though, we had to cut down on the rental car thing and actually cut it out of our program, not only because Uber and Lyft are available as other alternatives, but people were going out, and 2 times I got a car stolen from me and the customer didn't return. I had to figure out where the car was and get it towed back here and all this other stuff. So it just gets hairy, and you don't want to get in those kind of situations, I guess, with customers or
Right.
possibly an altercation.
Yeah, we don't need any altercations going on.
We make all the accommodations that we think that a good shop should make for the customers that are out. There's a lot of great shops out there that still have loaner cars, and maybe they're living in a city where people won't do the stupid things that people do to someone else's property. Even though you have their car there, they got a free ride and the car gets abused or broken or something while they have it. And I could go on and on with those stories, but we just said at one point it wasn't worth the investment anymore to have to do the upkeep on those cars, which oftentimes were abused.
Yeah. And I think it's important to understand how you make that transition to still provide excellent customer service and keep the customer in mind without putting yourself at too much risk as a business owner, because ultimately we serve a greater purpose and we serve many customers. We can't afford to go out of business trying to serve the few who are trying to take advantage of a good situation.
Precisely. That's the best way you could possibly state that without disparaging anybody.
We definitely don't want to go down that road.
No, don't want to go down.
Shifting gears a little bit, I know you spent years doing missions. You're still helping out with Good Works, doing helping hands for single moms, and you're running clinics, and you've got all this community involvement and missions and faith background. How has that shaped the way that you think about that customer experience, the employee experience? What success looks like? What does success look like in your business?
You hit the nail on the head. Dealing with people that are believers and people who are unbelievers and their different perspectives on life and what they consider someone going the extra mile or not going the extra mile vary considerably. I do have a lot of believers that come in here and do business with me, and that's why, because they know that my faith and trust is in the Lord, and it's not in myself or my techs or anything else like that. And I know His grace has been sufficient for everything that we've ever attempted to do. And we've always done the right thing, even though at the end of the day, we've ended up losing money and fixing people's cars without a deposit and end up leaving the car here, never picking it up. It gets impounded and I don't get my money. That accumulates to literally hundreds of thousands of dollars over the period of time that we've been in business. But you can't be discouraged. You can't let one isolated incident every 1,000 customers deflate you and discourage you to not continue to do things the way you've always done them, which is really important. My faith is in the Lord and not in mankind, because mankind will always disappoint at some level when given the opportunity. And there's just people like that. They just try to take advantage of everybody they can and benefit of themselves. And what was the second part of that question?
I really want to know what you learned in the community involvement and through your faith and through your missions work, and how that ties into how you run the shop today. What are the key lessons or key takeaways you could share that somebody else could pick up on?
Paul the Apostle said to do good to all people, especially those who are of the household of faith. So you treat everybody the same, whether they're a complete heathen and they come in here cursing out of both sides of their mouth or whatever. And they notice that. They notice that you're not jumping in the bandwagon and cursing the darkness or whatever. It's just, to me, that's just honestly, it's just a waste of time and energy, because there's a lot of evil in this world, as we all know, and we're seeing that even more so now than we ever have before. People coming out of the closet and just doing crazy stuff that just seems unreasonable and unthinkable, but apparently someone's paying them to do it. So they're doing it for the money, but at the end of the day, it's jeopardizing them and their life. It's really a shame. But what I learned on the mission field is that there's a lot of lost people out there who have no concept of what life really is and what it means to have the grace of God fall upon you. And when you come to faith, I was a rebellious sort of guy, but I wasn't a drinker or a doper or nothing. I never really had any big vices in my life from that perspective. But on the same end, I realized that I was a sinner and I was searching for something I couldn't find in the world, that's for sure. And actually, my older brother became a Christian. Some guy I was witnessing to him, he was a Ford tech, and he had a guy working next to him was a believer, and he witnessed him, so said, "Why don't you come to this prayer meeting?" And he said, "I don't need no prayer meeting." And everything. Finally, just to please the guy, he says, "Okay, I'll go to one meeting and then I'll tell you to go take a flying leap." So anyway, my brother and I were I have four brothers, but my older brother and I were a year and 10 months apart, excuse me. And we never really got along because I was a really outgoing person and I had lots of friends and everything. Every time he'd bring a friend over, he would want me to meet them because he was afraid that they're going to like me more than liked him. And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I'm just an outgoing person who likes to make friends. So he kept himself away from me, made sure that he was away when he did stuff with his friends and not at the house or whatever. And that was fine. I had lots of my own friends. But anyway, long story short, this guy, he came home one night. He starts reading his Bible, and we had five boys in the house and three bedrooms. So he and I slept in the same bed. He's up at night reading his Bible, and I said, "What are you reading that effing Bible for?" And shut off the effing light and leave me alone. He says, "I need to read this because it's really changing my life." He says, "So just close your eyes and whatever." And so I saw him changing, just drastically changing. He started liking me and we became closer brothers than we'd ever become before. And I'm thinking, what's going on with this guy, man? And long story short, I says, "Why don't you come to this prayer meeting?" And this is just a group of kids that someone went to sing at a high school and they're having a meeting in their home. And the next thing you know, they got this 30 or 40 person group of kids that were congregating and singing songs and reading the Bible, and they had someone teaching what does all of this mean and all of that kind of stuff. And none of them were pastors, just people who've known the Lord for a long time, and they're really adept at interpreting the Word of God and everything. And my brother, in the meantime, had gotten married, and something between him and his wife happened, and he totally turned away from the Lord. And to this day, he's not following or serving the Lord anymore, which I think is a travesty, but at any rate, it doesn't change my love and affection for my brother, and he and I are still very close. But on the subject of religion or Christianity, he's just a closed door. So I'm just praying for him, praying that someday he'll awaken again. The Lord will have pity and grace on him again and invite him back into the fold. I'm sure he didn't reject him. He just isn't responding. I'm sure the Lord's knocking on his door.
Yeah. And I think that's absolutely something that'll shape the way that you have moved forward in your life. I want to get us back focused in the auto repair side for just a little bit here.
Absolutely.
You've been with ATI for about 19 years. You've said more than once that a lot of techs know how to fix cars long before they learn how to run the business.
Yeah.
Between
Or
coaching
fix their
ATI,
business because they've already broken it.
so they've got to fix the business for sure. So can you walk me through a moment where having kind of the buddies in the industry or the coaching in the industry changed the way that you handled something big in your shop or a tough decision you had?
A lot of it has to do with, obviously, you go through a lot of techs over the years, and that's always a big thing because sometimes it's personality, sometimes it's skill level, sometimes it's attitude, sometimes it's attendance, sometimes it's their personal habits which spill over into their daily habits at work and stuff like that. To me, if I had my way, I'd probably hire all believers, but not all believers are perfect neither, and they don't have all of this other stuff, and that would be ideal. But when being a member of ATI kind of helps you to go through the process of hiring and firing people, if you will. How much do you put up with before, it's not only destroying your business, but it's destroying you as a business owner, because obviously you're in charge of this thing and no one else is telling you, what to do or what not to do. And so the business coaches, they coach dozens, if obviously ATI as a whole coaches thousands of shops.
Yeah.
So they've heard every story and every scenario. And so they share those with each other. The coaches do as well. And they impart a lot of wisdom through other people's trial and errors instead of yours. And you can either take it into consideration, apply it, or ignore it. Those are pretty much the three choices that we have in life when we hear information. And so it's been an absolute joy to be in that organization and to meet the great shop owners that I've met. And many of them in our group were believers. And so that made it even a stronger bond. But we meet at least 3 times a year. And then there's a super conference every year in some exotic place, which is a lot of fun as well.
Right.
But the having a coach, I think, is essential in almost every business. And this one being one of the most fastest changing industries besides AI, which none of us have anything to do with, except for utilizing it. But I'm just saying that there are certain industries where nothing really changes drastically. The medical, you could say, oh, the medical profession. Yeah, but they're not doing research and stuff. They're getting here prescribed these pills. The doctors don't have this arduous task of doing research and trying to figure out what's going to fix their client, right? As where someone pulls up in their car and something's broken, there's lights on, there's lights not working, there's things flashing that aren't supposed to flash, car won't start, or whatever the issue happens to be. It is so diverse. No two cars are the same. No two problems with that car are the same. And so it's a challenge that this industry has to face every day. And having incompetent techs, or people are just guessing, which is what a lot of shops are doing. They throw parts at something that doesn't fix it. So now they have to call the customer back and say, it wasn't just this, it's also this. And then step number 2 didn't work. And no, it wasn't just this. And I'm on forums all the time, daily. One of the first things when I wake up, I get on all of these forums of shop owners who run great shops. And they tell their stories too about stuff that kicked their butt, and some of the deep dives they have to do to really find one wire in a 1,000-wire loom that was causing this problem. The car had been to several other shops. We get those in all the time. I took it here and I took it there and I took it here, and they never found the problem. And so now they're relying on you. It just puts that much more pressure on you to have to figure out, am I going to be the guy? Am I going to be the hero or the next goat?
Yeah.
The next guy who couldn't figure it out and pass it on to the next guy and just lose a bunch of money. That's a big deal.
Yeah. And I know auto repair's changed a ton since you've been in the industry. You've watched things go from mostly mechanical and then into carburation. And now you were one of the first hybrid shops, as we mentioned, in the state of Arizona. And walk me through what the idea was and how you made the decision to transition each time you had to have a transition in the shop to keep up with everything that was going on.
Okay, I'll start with the hybrid thing. Actually, ATI had some guys in there, and they started working with a guy named Mark Porto. Mark Porto was the GM engineer who designed their hybrids, their batteries, their systems, and everything. The guy's a flipping genius, right? Very wonderful guy. And Mark left GM and he decided to go with the hybrid stock and start on this new venture of teaching other shops, traveling all over the country and teaching other shops how to work on hybrids, how to diagnose them, how to repair the batteries, whether it's the circuit systems or whether it's the batteries themselves, how to recharge them, how to discern whether a battery is rechargeable or not. And so the hybrid shop not only taught those principles and gave us that knowledge, but they also provided the equipment to be able to do that. So I think we went into thing 45, 50 grand, whatever it was. I can't remember the exact amount, but somewhere in that neighborhood to acquire the equipment and so on and start working on batteries. So we started marketing to it and people started gravitating almost immediately. And since then, we've worked on literally thousands of hybrid vehicles over the years. I think that probably started like 12 or 13 years ago. And eventually, we decided that scavenging hybrid batteries was very difficult because as more and more people acquire them and the batteries went out, they're scavenging from the junkyards and whatever. There weren't resources to get good or bad used batteries. And for a long time, we had a local cab company here that used primarily hybrids. And so they had literally hundreds of piles of hybrid batteries. So can I take some of these and work through them? I can build batteries for you. So I started building batteries for them as well because they were buying new batteries. It was costing them a lot of money. And so eventually they figured out how to fix the batteries. And so I wasn't getting their cores anymore, and getting cores was just really hard. And there was guys selling cores online, but you never knew whether they were going to be reliable. And we just decided to farm the thing out after a while, started working with these battery repair, the reliable ones, not just some guy working out of his garage. And that couldn't be a good thing, but the supply and the demand was great. The supply had to be there as well. And so we worked with Hybrid to Go and Green Tech and a bunch of other hybrid battery rebuilding companies. And it just became more economically feasible for us to move on in that direction as opposed to building the batteries ourselves.
Yeah, so I think that makes sense. And so it sounds to me like the initial idea came from a training opportunity that popped up with ATI, and you guys just took it and ran with it and were able
Absolutely.
to grow a whole side of your business
Yeah,
because
Mark actually came out. Mark Quarto came out to our shop and he spent 3 days here training my guys. And everyone got the training but me because I was still working fixing cars with one other guy while the other guys who were interested in doing the hybrid thing were taking the classes. And so I learned by talking, listening to them and reading the stuff. So I was able to do all of that stuff because I'm a pretty quick learner. And it's not as sophisticated as it may sound, but making sure that you take those things apart and every bolt and every nut and every screw and every contactor and everything had to be put back exactly where it was before. So we had a lot of success. We're still having success with it, although we're not rebuilding the batteries anymore. But there's other things that go wrong with hybrids too that are totally unrelated to the hybrid system. They're just like any other car. They need suspension works, tires, brakes, less frequently in some cases like the brakes because the transmission and the motors in the transmission on models that use that type of system, the brakes last sometimes 200,000 miles sometimes before the brakes need to be done. But there's always many other things that can be worked on hybrid vehicles.
yeah. And I think it's important for people who are listening to the show there to recognize that sometimes being involved in these coaching groups or these conferences or any opportunity you have to train and learn in the industry could give you that leg up and allow you to be one of the first to market and really give your business a big boost. But I think that's something, whether it's with ATI or another coaching organization, it's definitely important to be involved on that side of the business.
Absolutely. And those people stepped into that arena just from ATI who got involved with the hybrid shop and started doing the hybrid thing. A lot of people just were absolutely scared, terrified of it. In fact, nobody in our 20 group got involved with hybrids at all. While we were bragging about all the success that we had with them, they said, we got enough regular work. We don't really need to do that. So they used fleets or whatever it was to help make their business continue to grow and flourish. And we started doing some fleet work in the beginning, and now we're doing a good 30% of our business is fleet. And so I go out and solicit businesses all the time and ask them if they're happy with the company that they're using. And most of them roll their eyes and they say, yeah, this hit and miss. They're okay. And I says, what about everything that I do gets a complete digital inspection? That's another huge thing that we started doing. We started working with a company that had DVIs, and they were like one of the first companies to do it. And Uwe Kleinschmidt, I don't know if you're familiar with Uwe now, he's gone way beyond all of that stuff. This guy is a flipping genius. He's from Germany, and he's got that German intelligence thing going on. But Uwe was involved in that company and getting the digital inspections out. So we were actually the first shop in the entire state of Arizona that started doing digital inspections. Well, what's a digital inspection? It means we take a tablet and we take pictures of everything. We take your wheels off every time you come in. We take pictures of your brakes, your suspension. We take videos if there's a part that's loose. You got a bad tie rod end, or you got a bad something's loose in your front end, bushings or whatever. We can wiggle your wheels. Or if there's a grinding noise, we take a video and you can hear something grinding if you got a bad wheel bearing or something. So that was another huge leap into the future that we're still using today. And those systems keep getting better and better. So as this company continues to fine tune their product and make it do more than it ever did before, we're in, we download the stuff and we're totally in. But it's the transparency and the honesty and everything that it shows to your customer. I'm not just going to tell you guys, I'm going to show you. I'm going to let you listen to it. I'm going to let you say, wow, we've never been to a shop like that. They won't even take you in the back. I'll tell you, you can come into the shop. I'll show you. If you don't believe the video or what I'm telling you, or my service advisors are telling you, come on out. We'll show it to you for yourself. This isn't somebody else's car. This is your car. And it needs to be fixed or something bad could happen. And not in a threatening way, but just in an honest, we care about your viability in life. If this wheel bearing decides to say bye-bye and your wheel falls off or you can't steer anymore.
That actually brings me to the question we ask everybody on the show, which is the word honest obviously means something to us, the Honest Garage podcast. I own Honest Mechanic Marketing, but I like to hear from other people what that phrase honest mechanic or honest shop, honest garage, what does that mean to you personally? How does that show up in the way that you're running Good Works Auto Repair day to day?
It means total transparency. And that to me, I define that as Sometimes you don't have a good story to tell the customer. They've been abusing their car. There's only 1 quart of oil left in the pan or half a quart, and now their engine is ticking or knocking or whatever. And you can't shame somebody for it. We also we have access. Every car that we work on goes into Carfax, which is a big deal because we're reporting them what was done. So we can also look at any other shop who reports to Carfax. And the honest truth is most dealers don't even report to Carfax. I don't know why they don't, but maybe it's too much bother. I don't know what the underlying current is about that, but we find information that tells us this was repaired in this year at this many miles and so on. And sometimes if a cheap part was used, it's surprising to us that a part that was put on 6 months ago or a year ago has already failed. But we can look back and say, I just did that. Yes, we looked at the Carfax, but now these are the real facts. FACTS. Here's a picture of it. If you want to come out and see it in the bay, whatever part was put on there was not a well-manufactured part. It was a cheap part, and that's probably why you got a cheap price on it. We really use OEM stuff or OES, which is actual dealer parts, because our warranty is 5 years and 60,000 miles, which gives people really a lot of peace of mind. Most places are still no warranty or 1 year. 2 years is about the longest stretch you see out there, except for the people who are like me, who are honest, they're Christian. They know that people are struggling, and we're not the cheapest place in town because we use quality parts and they cost more than the cheaper parts. And I know where my margins need to be on parts, and I know what my margins need to be on labor. And so I'm probably more expensive than 50 or 60% of the shops in town. But at least people know that they're getting what they're paying for. Number one, they're getting a warranty that is second to none and unmatched by anybody else. And I've been in business for a long time, which is comfort and security. Some guys open up a shop and they've been in business for 6 months or a year or whatever, and they promise people the moon, and they're bleeding money faster than they can print it in the back room. All of that adds up to you're being in business for so long and having the reputation that we have earned. And I don't mean gotten, I mean earned. We've earned it because we ask for reviews. That's another big important thing. People are thrilled with you and they love you. Guess what? Would you mind? Oh, no, I wouldn't think twice about it. Yeah, I'll give you a review. But it's not the first thing that comes to their mind. So that's always what our service advisors, would you please leave us a review? Because that's important for our business to continue to succeed and grow. Because people want to know, who am I going to do business with? I'm sick and tired of all these other shops I've done business with. No one's been able to fix my cars right, or they're just gouging me and that thing. So it's a big deal to have those reviews that, back your claims. It's not me saying it, someone else saying it.
Absolutely. And I know we've covered a lot of stuff personally and professionally on the business side on today's show. And before we wrap up, as we're getting close to our time here, I just want to give you the opportunity to share a good way for people to connect with you and connect with GoodWorks Auto Repair. What's the best way for somebody who wants to dig into more to your story and learn more about what you guys are doing? What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Okay, my website is goodworksautorepair.com, www.goodworksautorepair.com. I have 2 podcasts on there. One is called Underneath the Hood with Glenn, and the other one is Underneath the Hood podcast, Underneath the Hood. So when you pull up that, you'll get both of them, and there's literally almost 200 episodes between the 2 podcasts. We don't tell you how to fix cars. The ones that are on the GoodWorks side, we do podcasts when something happens to somebody's car, whether deliberate or accidental or whatever, neglect, whatever. We never mention the name of the customer, just the type of car that it is. We don't take any shots to the license plate or anything. And in all probability, the customer themselves probably never would see that I did it. And I don't think it's anything dishonest. I'm trying to help people to avoid having happened to them what happened to this person. So I don't make any disparaging remarks about the person who blew up their car because they never changed the oil or whatever. I just merely say that this is why it's so important to all cars burn oil nowadays. I don't care if it's a Mercedes or whether it's a Yugo, it doesn't make any difference. They're all going to burn oil. Low tension rings have been around since 2005. They're all going to burn oil. Gas drag GDI motors have been around for 10 years or more in some cases. And there's nothing to lubricate, clean the gunk off the valves. They all start to burn oil. Get over it. So the point is, have your oil checked. Even if you come in here, I will check your oil for free. I'll top it off for free. I don't want you to blow up your engine. And there's other preventative things that need to be done. It's not just the engine oil. It's the coolant. It's the hoses. It's the transmission fluid. It's the brake fluid. All these things can have a catastrophic effect on the longevity of your vehicle. So it's really important to us to educate and train the people who never, I always talk about the owner's manual in the glove box. Many people buy a car, and it's already gone because the first person who owned the car second threw it in the garbage. But the owner's manual is compared to the Bible in your hotel room. It's there, but you never pull it out and read it, right?
That's a really good analogy.
And on the other side of that, even if people know, they look at I'll do it next week, I'll do it next month. I know I'm behind in my oil change, so I'm behind it. Well, behind can cost you thousands of dollars. So we try to really educate that and drive that home. Yes, your repair today is $500, $600, maybe $1,000, $1,500 in maintenance stuff. But over the long run, you're not going to be spending $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 putting an engine, a transmission, or whatever in this vehicle. I've got a Honda Odyssey, that's the testament. I got a Honda Odyssey shuttle van. We bought it with 6,000 miles on it when my kids were little. And now it has 315,000 miles on it. Still has the original motor. I put 2 transmissions in it. I've kept up on the brakes and all the maintenance stuff and everything. The car still looks and runs like new. So that's a testament to what maintenance does versus neglect. And so one of our slogans is, can you afford the cost of neglect? That's on our website.
I think that's a really good thing to keep in mind for people as we wrap up the day's show. And I hate to cut you off, but unfortunately, the timing on our show just is limited for today. So
that's
if anybody
okay.
wants to get in touch with you, Glen, it sounds like the best place for them to go is going to be goodworksautorepair.com and check out the podcast or reach out directly to you at the shop. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. I'm willing to talk to anybody who wants to hear me talking to them or with them. I'm a good conversationalist, and I'm very educated in what I do. I've been doing this for a long time.
That much is absolutely true. Between the prep call and this conversation, yeah, everybody should reach out to Glen. He's absolutely worth the conversation. And if you got value from today's conversation, I would just encourage you to share it with another shop owner. Subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Leave us a review for the show. As Glen mentioned, really helpful for your shop, really helpful for our show too, so that more people can learn more about this show and we can get the word out a little bit better. For more resources and real-world marketing help for auto repair shops, you can obviously head over to honestmechanicmarketing.com. We'd be happy to have that conversation with you. And I just want to say big thank you again to our guest today, Glen Hayward, and for sharing your story and what's been working at Good Works Auto Repair.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure being here, David. And thank you for the opportunity. I know you guys, this is a newish podcast, but I hope that other great contributors will come on, maybe who are even better than me, and make you guys shine, because I think you deserve it. God bless you guys. It's been a blessing being on here. And if you can ever suffer having me on again in the future, I'm willing.
That sounds great, Glen. We really appreciate that. And for everybody else out there, I just want to say thanks again for listening. And as always, keep it honest in the garage.
Obviously, I want to build Queen Creek, but
yeah,
I've got customers over there. I've got somewhere to send them. Hence the sharing the phone number, stuff like that. It's going to benefit us in the long run to help build that shop too.
Sure.
So, but it's been so much nicer being able to focus my efforts every day on these 2 locations, these 2 shops out here, just because it's, I'm able to, and as I got out here and stayed out here, it actually became a lot better. I mean, numbers went up. I started recognizing some things, and things have done really well. So, I think as a shop owner, I mean, most shop owners out there look at reports and they see the ARO and they see their profit margins and they see all of those types of things.
They know what that means.
But at the end, once all that's said and done, when those numbers start dipping, where do you look next?